Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
And when we talk about that wider, I'm going to have to start that one again. So thinking beyond the single plant, I think often when from my experience, there's I've lost the train of thought now.
Take a breath.
Yeah. I'm the one there. No, it's about the siloed single plants and like how they work sort of independently. It's like, I guess is that your experience, and it's sort of bringing that. How do you bring that together if that is the case? They do work as almost separate entities, I guess. How do you join up that approach, or help to join up that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, when we are working with clients, we're always thinking about scale and going beyond, the initial factory where you're doing this, the proof of value, and thinking how do you actually get this out to many plants. Some of the consequences of that we see is that you end up creating communities within those organizations. Because we're utilizing cloud-based technology, everybody's got access to, a single common instance of all the data. So you can theoretically, you can have colleagues that are maybe experts in a certain machine type within Europe, supporting colleagues maybe in Asia or North America, and starting to build that interrelationship. And then a nice side effect as well is that you get some competition. Clients saying, well, you're actually achieving increased overall equipment effectiveness based on the use of predictive maintenance technology. How are you doing it, and how can we do that in our plant as well?
We focus on the food and beverage sector in RS Industria, and the nature of that sector is you end up with a lot of, even with big food groups, a lot of the factories are different because they're making different products. One might be making ice cream, one making bread, and clearly you go, well, there's not a lot of similarity in terms of the assets there. But actually what we're able to do is actually help them just share ideas and concepts, not just within the same company, but actually between businesses and between verticals. Because actually, if you're sitting in a factory and making syrups in Herefordshire, actually your pains and jobs to be done are very similar to a factory making bicycles in West London. And what we're able to do is just help build out that community, a bit like Rob said, but for us it's more between customers, and actually helping to bring the outside in to allow the engineering leaders on their sites to see what good looks like and how to solve the same problems, because a rotating asset is a rotating asset regardless of what it's rotating. And so we can help as a facilitator to share best practice between different businesses and different business units.
Yeah, so actually let's dive into that. I mean, how do you facilitate that sort of collaboration between customers?
Just it's about building relationships. It's about we have in the sales cycle, we clearly talk to a lot of customers there and share pains there, and then we've got a customer success team who work with the customers once we've deployed to make sure they see value, and by getting to know the customers, getting to know multiple customers and building relationships with people, then it allows you to start to share. And quite often we'll say, actually, one of our other customers, has got a similar problem. Would you be interested in a conversation? And of course, they always say yes. And then the other person always says yes, because they're always happy to build relationships outside of their space as well. So it's about building relationship, understanding the customers, understanding what people are really trying to do on a daily basis and do with the data allows you to then share best practice.
Yeah. And I think that there's probably some merits in actually exploring the ideas of building up more communities in and around this. I mean, there's some concepts I was talking to some colleagues in Germany about last week, where they're pushing forward a concept of collaborative condition monitoring. And trying to open this up across sectors and seeing how you build more communities. There's always challenges there where, there's maybe competing organisations that might not be willing to share too much. But I think, as Richard mentioned, there's even quite diverse, different organisations. There's still benefits they can get, because it's fundamentally, like you said, it's rotating machinery at the end of the day. It's motors, pumps, gearboxes.
And could we see these type of communities forming help? What you were saying earlier, Rich, the market's not probably where it was, what people were predicting 5 years ago. Could that help, I'd say, accelerate or at least move things along quicker, the more sharing of knowledge and education, that side of things?
Exactly. I think, demonstrating that we are way past the proof of concept stage. The technology works, the sensors work, the data acquisition works, the analytics works. What it's about now is demonstrating value. And getting people to share their value stories, is really helpful, because then you can say, when people are trying to get the funding inside their business, and their business is saying, where's the, can you demonstrate the value? Be able to say, well, I was talking to another factory in a similar situation, and they've seen, X £1,000s worth of value. It makes it real, and it'll accelerate adoption, because we'll move away from talking about POCs and we'll just focus on value.
Yeah. And I don't know what your experience has been like, Richard, but I feel a lot when we're talking to different clients, some of these sectors are just separated through vocabulary. They've got different terminologies, different buzzwords, and they kind of talk past each other. And I find that I end up sort of bridging that and trying to translate, in the way that maybe somebody within, maybe like a heavy industry sector is talking, as opposed to, like a food and beverage sector. They use different wording.
I'd agree. Every sector's got their own wording. Every sector thinks it's unique. Certain sectors are particularly bad for having, everybody has come up through the business, so they've had very little bringing the outside in. And the more we can do as partners to people to, as you said, Rob, translate, is got to be helpful.
Yeah. And you mentioned partners as well, because is that part of the, offer it a complete, like a partner ecosystem, I guess, because you can't work in isolation when talking to customers anymore, because they obviously use different systems, have different vendors. So how do you both, I guess, but start with Rob maybe, how do we approach that from a Senseye perspective?
From a Senseye and sort of a Siemens perspective, there is a fundamental shift, and something at the core of digitization. And when we talk about, the old terms of like industrial IoT, interoperability is a key thing at the core of that. And that's not just interoperability at the hardware element, it's interoperability at all levels of the technology stack. Thinking as we're moving into that new space within the Siemens world, there's a whole move to embrace that. We've got our accelerator program, which it's not about introducing new technologies, it's about developing that ecosystem and where we can expose the type of technologies that we have within Senseye, within Siemens, but also we realise that we need third-party, middleware and hardware to help fill some of those technology gaps, especially at the sensing level.
I don't think there's any business, who can claim to deliver, everything that's required to help, help someone move through a digitization journey. There's so many bits of it. There's the data acquisition hardware, the sensors, the industrial networking. You've got the gateway. You've got the solution engineering, the system integration. You've got the hyperscale cloud compute. You've got the data management. You've got the application layer. And I think, if someone claims to be able to do all of that on their own, then I think buyer beware. Someone who openly talks about their partner ecostructure to pull in, the expertise that's needed in each of those quite different spaces. They're the people who are going to help you on the journey, because they're the people who've done the work for you to build out that partner ecosystem system, avoiding you having to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's also a case, I guess, customers want you to be part of their existing ecosystem. They don't want you to come and be a separate island over here. So I guess it's about joining these systems up so they fit in with existing workflows as well.
Exactly, and it's a journey. You've got to realise that what you're doing is, you've not got the benefit of greenfield sites. You're building on top of systems that have been developed over decades. So there's existing infrastructure that's there, legacy solutions. That's all got to be compatible. In the industrial world, it's not like we think about things maybe in our home where, you quite happily replace your phone every other year. You don't think twice about, getting the newest, greatest television in your house. If you're buying a machine to run a production line in a factory, you're probably thinking of keeping that for 20 years, and maybe longer in some cases. So you need the digitization in sort of the whole Industry 4 is something that's going to take a long time to roll out. And you need to have plans where you can have that backwards compatibility and introduce, compatibility with legacy systems. So yeah, it's not a big bang. We're not going to, go into work one Monday morning and all of a sudden we're digitized. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or switch on a predictive maintenance software and immediately the benefits start rolling, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or and actually, well, it's a good point to sort of continue on actually about expectations setting. Is there an expectation for things to happen quickly? A month was what, are we not seeing big successes, or is it just a case like managing expectations, I guess, as well?
I mean, maintenance is not complicated, but it is hard. And if I stop doing maintenance today on all my assets, I won't see that pain until the future. And if I start doing maintenance today on all my assets, I won't see the benefit until the future. So maintenance is a long-term investment. Rob said you're looking for 20 years plus out of an asset. And your maintenance strategy has got to support that asset across the entire 20 years of its life. The time when you can see really quick benefit in terms of cash is where you start to realise that your time-based maintenance you're doing is non-value adding at best, probably value destroying at worst. And if you're able to stop doing time-based maintenance because you've moved to a predictable, then you're going to see that in cash benefit straight away. But actually, if it's much more than that, it's going to take a while for the benefits to come through.
Yeah, exactly. And just an interesting sort of anecdote, just talking about time-based maintenance, we had a specific example on a pilot that we were running where when they connected our technology up, they actually stopped doing the periodic maintenance. And we were 6 months in and didn't see any failures. What it turned out is all the failures they'd been seeing in this problematic machine were maintenance-induced. Right? Failures that they'd been misaligning things when they were reassembling the machines, and then they were failing rapidly. So there is benefits even once you start to use the technology, take humans out of the loop, stop intervening in machines, the world becomes a little bit more stable.
I was reading a piece of research from 1943 on a B-24 Liberator squadron, and they had a very rigorous 50-hour maintenance schedule on the airframes. And they realised, but they had appalling availability, less than 50% availability of these U-boat hunting Liberators, and they realised it was actually all the availability issues were maintenance-induced failure, and the closer they got to the 50-hour window, the higher the availability got, and so they just stopped doing the 50-hour maintenance, and the availability got higher and higher and higher because they were doing time-based maintenance to address the at best 20% of failures that are time related, and introducing the circa 2/3 of failures that are early life failures.
Yeah. So it's like over maintaining is better than failure. I think that's a phrase.
And people have a perception that I'm doing this time, that's got to be a good thing, but actually in more times than not. An over-reliance on time-based maintenance is value destroying, not even value neutral.
Yeah, because all those interventions are other points where you can be introducing sort of incorrect activities, incorrect lubrication, incorrect fitting. Yeah, so every time you touch the machine, you've got another risk occurring.
Yeah, so that's another interesting thing. So it's not just about, like when we talk about scaling, lots of machines, not focusing in the wrong areas, but it's actually, that's an interesting, just on the individual machine, you could be wasting time. Oh, no, it's not wasting, but affecting that machine in the longer term as well.
Yeah, so unnecessary maintenance, and that maintenance is actually causing problems. Yeah, that's it.
I thought, 20 odd years ago, I was a packaging manager at a brewery in Reading before I knocked it down. We had the very traditional 2-week shutdown in January where we take the line to pieces 2 weeks, find out why it hadn't broken yet, and introduce a whole bunch of early life failures. And they were fantastically expensive events because we had, contract labour, we had a massive consumption of spare parts, we had, a load of overtime being run, 2 weeks not available to produce beer. Fortunately, it was January. That's why we did it then, because everybody's given up drinking. But actually what we then saw was, often, weeks, if not into months worth of low availability and low reliability, directly related. And it was just accepted as being, oh yeah, well, that's because we've had the maintenance intervention. And I was just talking to one of my colleagues who was, who'd been a colleague then yesterday, and we were just both reflecting, going, now if I ran a factory now and saw that was happening, I would just ban the traditional 2-week overhaul because they are value destroying.
Yeah. And the sort of thing that we see, and once you get access to the data, you probably see it yourself as, coming up to, maybe if you do have that 2-week window, you turn it more into opportunistic maintenance. You use data to decide what actually needs done and when, because you've got the insight. You don't need to strip the machine down. You get some data to tell you which parts are needing the attention.
Yeah, the analogy is your car. Do you on your car, do you say to the MOT, the garage and the MOT, regardless of the state of my brake discs, I would like you to put some more brake discs on them, and regardless of the state of my tyres, I would like you to put 4 new tyres on my car? Of course not, because that is insanity. But so we know in our private lives that time-based maintenance is insanity, and it should be on condition inspection-based maintenance. But in the work life, so many people do the equivalent of putting new brake discs and new tyres in the car every year at their MOT.
Yeah. Because that strikes me as just being overly cautious in a work environment. I was also wondering whether there's caution in terms of trusting technology to to help with this. Is it telling me the right things? Like, how do we overcome that sort of hurdle, I guess?
Yeah, and that is an aspect of it. I guess you can only really get insight in what the coverage of data that you have is, right? So you've still got to accept that there's probably still some experts required to be thinking about those machines and having a look at them. But yeah, there's that element of trust in what you're saying, and also that takes time to develop. We've seen clients where maybe it's even like 2 years into using the system before they've had the confidence to say, right, we're going to take away those quarterly lubrication samples that we do on those gearboxes, because now we've seen enough evidence that anytime we see a problem, we're detecting it in the data before we're getting the results back from the lab on the lubrication sample. And then just use the lubrication sample as a validation mechanism after that. So we're saying, okay, data's showing us some things wrong. Let's use some more traditional techniques to help diagnose and understand where the problem is. But yeah, you've got to take time to build up trust and evidence in that.
Yeah. And that's why it's like we were saying before, it's a longer game. So if you're looking for short term, click your fingers and it's done. You've got to give it time for all of those reasons.
But I think with industry, you've got a much more opportunity. If I think back to the way that a lot of this stuff was done within aviation, in an aviation environment, you have to go back to a regulatory authority. And this is even true within things like the rail sector. You can't just go about willy-nilly changing maintenance strategies because you've had a certification that's taken place. I went through exercises where we were using transmission vibration monitoring data and then going back with case studies to airworthiness authorities to say, right, we actually strip this gearbox down every 2,000 operating hours, but we've got evidence now to show the results of the overhauls or the inspections compared to the data tell us that we could actually leave it on the aircraft longer. But that's quite a lengthy exercise to go through with an airworthiness authority. But within an industrial environment, because the safety is a different magnitude, you can actually move ahead and make those decisions yourself. You don't need to go to a third party. So I think within industry, to get those benefits, the opportunity is far greater than many other sectors.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing we talked about there is, so it's not necessarily replacing your maintenance strategy with predictive, but it's sort of blending different strategies together. Would you say that's the case, Richard?
There is nothing wrong with run to fail as a maintenance strategy, as long as you've made a conscious decision around that, and as long as you understand the impact of that failure. we don't change all the luminaires in our domestic lighting every 12 months. Even though light bulbs do fail for end of life, we just wait till they fail because the consequence of failure is low. And so, any mature maintenance strategy should be using a blend of run to fail where that's the right, of time-based inspection, where that's the right thing to do. Scheduled restoration, where inspection tells you that you need to do restoration, and condition monitoring. It's all about understanding the consequence of failure, the cost of the failure, and the cost of the intervention.
Yeah, totally agree. And there is no single maintenance type that forms this strategy, right? It is a blend, as you describe, and it's where you build that cost effectiveness and business model up to do it. And it's even down to ease of access to the machine. If it's something that you've got spares readily available, you can get in and do it without having to stop the line. Well, that's fine. Let's let it run to fail. But if it's something that's going to have a 6-month lead time on getting a new component, you want to think quite differently about it.
Yeah, I guess the other benefit of that approach is you can sort of phase it in as well over a long term. It's not like you're dropping in a new strategy. It's sort of phased in. Again, we talked about fitting with existing workflows, but I guess that also means maintenance approaches as well.
Exactly. You don't just turn up on day one and change your maintenance strategy. Maintenance strategy is about culture as well as about ways of working. You've got to bring the team with you. One of our early customers, a guy called Ben, he's 3 years into his maintenance maturity journey with the particular customer he works on, and he started off with a load of restoration activity on his steam system. He moved into some simple monitoring of utility consumption. He moved in, then it's better work allocation with the technicians. And actually only now, as he's now 3 years into the maturity journey, is he now starting to look at some broad-based rollout of condition monitoring. Because actually the failures he was seeing were not going to be addressed by condition monitoring at the stage of his journey he was at. Now he's got stability. He can start to bring in CM, and he's got the workforces on the journey with him and understands the value.
Yeah, and that's really key as well. I mean, because sometimes, it might not be like predictive maintenance might not be the thing that's going to be the top hitter to get the benefit that the board are looking for, right? Like you're saying, Richard, it might be energy monitoring. I think we know with the current state of affairs at the moment, there's probably reducing your energy bill by 10% might be much more significant than reducing your maintenance burden by 20. So it's about that balance and the right point in that digital journey and knocking off those, the top one or two within the cost drivers. But eventually you get there, you get to the point where you start to look for the next opportunity and the next saving, and that might be helping in the maintenance strategy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're coming towards the end. So I wanted just to round things off with, so we've talked a lot about adopting technology and culture, and it's just really from both of you, your vast years of experience in the industry, and experts in the industry, of course. But if someone wanted to sort of really start looking at Industry 4.0 and collecting data, or even making use out of their existing data, as we discussed, because as we were saying, there's data there to be utilised. Like, what would be your sort of free tip, or what would be your tips in general for them to sort of get started and start getting use out of that data they've collected? So we'll start with Richard.
So everything starts with the problem statement. What is the thing that you're trying to solve? As Rob said, it might be energy is the most important thing for you, not condition monitoring or reliability. So start with the problem that you're trying to solve. You don't just get data for the fun of it. You're trying to solve a business problem. Within that problem, think about criticality. So where are the really critical assets? If you're looking at electricity, you don't monitor the thing on a 1 amp supply, you monitor the thing on a 100 amp supply, because that's where you're going to see the biggest bang for your buck. And then start doing stuff, because we don't need to prove the concept. You need to prove the value, and you start that by looking at a small focused area, create value, and then reinvest that value to then expand out from your starting point.
Yeah. And I think when you talk about data, maybe in the context of the questions, we have to go kind of beyond the type of sensor data that we're talking about, and actually look for data that's within the operational area. Maybe we'd think of it more as sort of information. Like we a lot of companies have got systems monitoring production line status and downtime statistics, monitoring. You're capturing maintenance information. You've got all these human transactions and transactional data. And you can start to analyze that, and that's where you do understand where you're going to get this sort of the biggest bang for the buck. And then that then leads you to look for that more traditional data that you're going to use to change the business, which might be the information that's in your automation network. So start with the operational data to make the decision and focus on where to go, and then start to look for the sensor or analog data that can help you achieve that.
Fantastic. No, really good way to end, some actionable tips. So it's been a really good session. Thank you both for coming to the studio. And hope you've enjoyed it. I think the audience will get a lot out of it too. Thank you very much. So thank you for joining this episode of Trend Detection. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe on your favourite podcast channels and YouTube, etc. And we'll see you again on the next episode.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.